what I have noticed from the textbooks I sometimes work with is that they're not like completely wrong. So sentences are not completely wrong, but as you said, they're not sometimes not that natural as in real life.
Hi all. Today's episode is for everyone who is learning German. We have Stefanie here, who is a German language content creator and a teacher. She hosts conversation courses, individual classes, and learning groups, which focus on real life conversations. We are very happy to have Stefanie here to tell us how German learning is done, what are the problems you face while learning German, and how to tackle it with confidence. So, welcome, Stefanie, to our podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me.
So, Stefanie, as I mentioned, you focus on one-on-one classes and also conversation courses and much more of teaching. Yeah. So, we would like to know how it all started. What was the spark for you to teach German and all those details of how your classes happen.
Okay, yes, how did it all start? So I'm from Germany. I grew up in Germany, but I came to Brazil pretty young, so with 21. I've been living in southern Brazil for almost 14 years now. And I came to teach, or I started teaching actually in a local language school here in the town I live. It's quite a small town. And I started out as an English teacher. And first there was just this notion, oh, okay, you speak English, then you can teach English. And I fall into this trap, which is a dangerous trap because it's nothing like this. It's not like, okay, I can speak the language and then I can teach it. But that's how I started teaching. And then, of course, while teaching, I invested heavily in my professional development as a teacher because in practice, I realized, okay, no, it's not like this. Speaking a language doesn't mean teaching a language. And so I started out as an English teacher, and then I had the opportunity also to take on some German classes in that language school. But because it was here a local language school, there were just few students. And then, as we all know, the pandemic came along, and the pandemic, I think, changed many people's lives, and mine as well. So all classes from this language school went online, and this was when I discovered the potential of online classes and online teaching. And I wasn't very happy teaching English and German, so two languages, and to all different levels, different ages. So I felt this was too much, and I wanted to focus. And so with the pandemic, I discovered online classes, online teaching, and I saw, okay, this is a possibility for me to focus first on German because I can give classes to people theoretically all around the globe, but my main focus is on Brazil. Yes, and so after a while, I became a freelance teacher, or I quit the language school and I worked for myself. But just teaching one-to-one private classes. And then while teaching private classes, I realized that something is missing in private classes. I think private classes or one-to-one sessions are great, and they're very good. They have many benefits for different purposes. But I think they are not the best environment to prepare students for authentic or real-life communicative situations. Mainly because the teacher is a very, I would say, a cooperative interlocutor. So the teacher always helps the students or the learners to communicate. So when there's a misunderstanding, probably the teacher is able to detect it and help out. When the student are missing some words or when they don't know how to express their ideas clearly, the teacher is there and helps out, which is very important. But you know well that in real life, it's not like this. We don't have always a teacher by our sides. And so I think my first idea was, okay, in order to prepare my students, my private students, for real life communicative situations, I need to create a different environment. And this was where the idea of conversation classes started. Of course, there aren't real life, but in the conversation amongst learners already have to find out different strategies or discover different strategies to make communication happen, to get their ideas across, because the other learner also has some limitations maybe, or what do I do if I'm not being understood? What strategies can I apply or can I resort to if I'm not being understood, if the other person is not being understood, if I realize, okay, there has been a misunderstanding, perhaps I have to reformulate, and so on and so forth. So this was where the idea of conversation classes came along. And also, so my first goal was actually to join, to offer my students the possibility to have contact with other students. Because in online teaching, private classes, every student is on their own. And I think it's much more motivating to learn in a community when you know, okay, I have other people to which I can talk to. I have other people with whom I can share my sorrows, my problems, my ideas, my discoveries, whatever. And so I wanted to bring also my private students together, also to see how well they're doing, actually, because sometimes when you aren't comparing yourself, or comparison can have disadvantages, but also it helps you to see, okay, I'm doing pretty good, actually. So sometimes I saw a lot of progress. My students were doing a lot of progress, but they were always comparing themselves to me as a teacher. And then it was like, oh no, I'm not making any progress. I can't see how I'm developing. And when they're put together with other students, then they have different examples. And then they can see, oh yes. And they can also experiment in more authentic communicative situations what they can really do with the language. And so this was this was the main reason why I started to offer conversation classes. And then obviously also to be able to offer something for more students, because teaching one-to-one, there's a limit that's quickly reached on how much students I can take. And so in order to be able to offer something for more people, I also started with group classes.
Interesting.
That's great. So, Stephanie, you want to add something more about Deutsch mit Pfiff?
Of course. Yes, and one important thing, I only work with advanced learners. So from B1 plus on. So people who have already finishing or have already finished the B1 level. So I focused on this group of learners. Yes. Yeah, and
I'll be a good fit then.
exactly. You are my target audience, and Shilfa very soon, I guess.
True. And I also was looking at the handle, right? The Instagram name, Deutsch mit Pfiff. So I checked like mit Pfiff, because first I was thinking, okay, if this is a name, but later we came to know your name is Stephanie, so it was not your name. And then I checked, and then it said Deutsch mit Pfiff. Mit Pfiff means with a difference, right? Or do you have like any specific meaning to that name?
No, exactly. You found the right meaning. And yes, later I realized that it can be a bit confusing, because
Hmm.
the tendency is for people to say like Deutsch mit, and then they say their
Yeah.
name. Right? German with
Name.
Stephanie's, German with Anna, Deutsch
Yeah.
mit Lara, and so on.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
yes, but Deutsch mit Pfiff means exactly this, with a different, something that's not that traditional, that ordinary, like a bit unique, something like this.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm living up to this name, or if, but my idea is to offer something that's a bit different from traditional language teaching, or what we know from normal courses, or what first comes to mind generally when we think about language teaching. We think about course books, we think about grammar, we think about having a fixed syllabus that we're going to follow. And so my idea is to offer something different, a little bit more flexible, more student-centered, more communicative, and especially something where grammar is just a means to an end and not the reason why we are studying.
That's nice.
Interesting target group. All the best.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes,
So,
and no, Shilpa asked in general about Deutsch mit Fifth. I just wanted to add that my idea in general is to bring people together. So to create a community for advanced learners to exchange, trade ideas, learn together. And this is also where my learning group comes in, the Lerntreff, which is actually, how can I say? Yeah, it's something I offer for free, and it's actually self-learning sessions or self-study sessions. We meet once a week, and I also give like tips and materials for people to study, mainly authentic or like semi-authentic materials. Because I want to create this community of learners, and I also want to encourage self-study skills, because I believe, or I'm convinced, and it's proven as well, that you won't make great progress if you only study in class. So progress in the language, development in the language comes from continuous study and contact with the language outside class. And I've seen many people struggle with this, fitting German into their routine, into their daily routine. And as well, yeah, they don't know how to do it. So how can I study on my own? And so this was my idea with the Lerntreff, to offer something that helped people study on their own, so with resources, but also weekly. We meet weekly meetings, so people have at least one day a week where they can focus on studying German or learning German or having contact with German.
That's really great.
yes, I saw about LearnRough too. You do have a session today, I guess, right? Because it said like January 21st, you have a session. So, yeah, one day I'll also show up there, probably.
Yes, you're more than welcome. And actually, I do it like this because I want to give different possibilities, time of possibilities. So today it's in the evening here in Brazil, so it's midnight for you in Germany. But then next week, the meeting is going to be in the morning here in Brazil. So also other people from other time zones can attend.
That's so thoughtful, and it's really nice. So, it can benefit a lot of students, the timing wise.
A lot of people are in level A2 or B1, right? So, what should they realistically focus on to improve their speaking? Because at this level, people don't get much exposure to speaking because they are in the classroom. So, what strategies do you have here?
Yes, so
Wonderful.
my first or my biggest recommendation is listen to a lot of German. So expose yourself to a lot of German, because when you listen, first of all, you get used to the sounds and to the melody of the language, and this is very important for you to speak with more confidence and to speak more fluently later. And I don't know if this happened to you, but for me sometimes it happens when I hear like the different languages and I don't understand the language at all, or I understand little. But when I hear it a lot and intensively, then just the melody like echoes in my head. And this melody helps us later with speaking, because we have already the melody and the sounds of the language in our head, and then we have to fit the words in. But Like the flow and the melody is already there. And also, of course, vocabulary, right? So when you listen to a lot of German, then you're going to have a lot of contact with vocabulary, and this, if it's repeated, it eventually sticks, and it will be more easy, or it will be easier for you to retrieve it when you want to speak. And now with the internet, it's great. What I recommend my B1 students mainly, but it's also good for A2, are vlogs. So there are many German teachers or Germans or German speaking people who make vlogs on the internet. So where they just talk about their daily life, what they're doing, and it often targets learners on this level. So A to B1, and they call it like comprehensible input, comprehensible German. And I think this is a really good place to start, to have lots of exposure to German and listen to a lot of German on an A2 B1 level. Yeah, so
Okay.
this would be my first recommendation. And then another thing that I think is very important, when you learn new words, try to write them down always in context. So what I mean, in a sentence or in part of a sentence, in a clause. Because like this, you already have, like, let's say, a ready-made example or a ready-made piece of language that you can use, or that you can maybe tweak a little bit and then adapt to your situation. But it's easier for you to use this word if you have an example sentence, and because you know already, okay, I don't know what the article is, or what verb maybe I should use with this noun, and so on. And so this will be much easier to actually put it into practice or to speak, because you have already this chunk of language that you can easily use. And then, of course, speak, right? So speak to yourself. Try to use words that you've learned in class, for example. Speak them out loud. Talk to yourself. Talk about your day. Describe your room, whatever. Talk to yourself. Nobody's listening, and you can just experiment with the language. You can see what you already know, where your doubts are, and it's just, practicing. I think with more practice also, you're gonna be more confident. And don't focus too much on correct grammar. Focus first on speaking, on expressing yourself, and getting your message across.
Wonderful. I mean, lovely tips. Even I like the first one with listening. I guess this is something that you were doing with your Schweiz Deutsch, right? Because you were trying to understand the German by listening. So, yes, I guess they should make a good impact on learners.
Exactly. Yes. My Schweizerdeutsch, I train like this. I listen a lot, and I really have this effect occurs that when I listen, I don't know, to 15-minute video, then after I hear like the sound, the melody of Schweizerdeutsch in my head, but I'm not able to speak. It isn't my goal to speak. I just want to get to know this language or this dialect a bit better.
I mean, I'm glad that we are not in Schweiz because they don't say the whole word. They keep it like everything is like very short, short, short. And like, I mean, that's the beauty of the language, but it's very hard to understand as well, even if you know German.
Totally. There are many different dialects or dialects actually, German dialects that I have a hard time understand, like a really hard time. And Schweizerdeutsch, okay, as I said in my story, it's like, okay, 50%, depending on the topic, sometimes less. But there are some Bavarian dialects where I understand absolutely nothing.
What is the hardest dialect you
I
think?
don't know. Some Bavarian dialects, I don't know every dialect, but some Bavarian dialects, I don't
It's
understand
hard to.
anything. And also some dialects from northern Germany. There's some Plattdeutsch, some dialects that I think they're closer to, how do you say, to Dutch than to Germany, than to
Right.
German. And yes, actually, I try, for me, they're like different languages, because It's not like, okay, Hochdeutsch or Standard German is like the right language, and these are like derivatives, or like
Yes,
they
you can
don't.
say that
Uh,
deriving
actually,
from this.
exactly. So it's not like, okay, Standard German is the right language, and then these dialects they derive from Standard German. Actually, Standard German is like an artificial language. This was created
To make people
in
understand, I
Easy,
guess.
make it easier.
For
exactly. First, so the dialects they existed first, and later on came standard or
okay.
We already mentioned that class learning is not alone sufficient for us to speak fluent in real life. So, as a teacher, what are top three things you would suggest for students to do outside the classroom so they can learn German faster?
I think these are very similar to the recommendation I gave earlier for the A2B1 level students. So, of course, listen and read a lot in German. And when you listen and read, you can actually choose between two types of listening and reading. Yeah? So, we have extensive reading, which is like, or listening, which is like more listening for pleasure. So, normally when you read a book of fiction or non-fiction, or I don't know, some articles because you want to know more about the topic, or you listen to podcasts. This would be more extensive reading. So you extensive reading or listening. So it's more about actually you want to know about the content, and it's not so much about the language. And then you can also of course have intensive listening or reading when you pay specific attention to the language. And yeah, students can choose, or learners can choose what they want to do, a bit of that, a bit of this. So, but basically, it's important to have a lot of contact with the language. Yes, another thing. So I think it's interesting as well. So besides having a lot of contact, reading and listening a lot to German, it's interesting to look out for, or to seek ways to interact meaningfully with people in German. So if you live in a German country, in a German speaking country, for example, I have some students or some learners that live in Germany and in Switzerland, and I tell them, do a hobby in German. So, I don't know, join a club or do something, I don't know, do voluntary work or do something where you can interact in German with other people, with which is not work, because at work you always have a bit of pressure, right? But I don't know, I have a student who likes to fight with a sword, something like this, some medieval sword fight. Yes, and so he joined a club, and all the communication is in German. Yeah, so this, but of course, if you don't live in a German speaking country, something small you can do is just interacting on social media with people that speak German, or yeah, joining, reading book clubs, conversation classes,
Right.
learning groups or something like this. For all this, like reading and listening and interacting with other people, finding a hobby in German or something like this, it's really important that you, or that learners, choose things that they are genuinely interested in. So something that really interests you. It's not something that the textbook says, that the teacher says, but the topics that you are really interested in. You want to know about these topics. You are interested in in these topics. It's maybe a bit more difficult for less advanced learners, but especially from B2 on, you can pick your topics. Okay, you're interested in history, then read and listen to history stuff. You're interested in self-development, then look out for these materials or interact with people who talk about this, and so on, because this will get you going, and this will give you the motivation to really do something in German outside class. Because it's not like, okay, yeah, I have to study German, but it's, I'm going to read this book in German, and this book is really good, and I want to read this book, and I'm looking forward to the end of the day where I can sit on the sofa and read this great book.
Awesome.
So it's to bring our interests together with German learning, which makes it more fun and easier to learn the language.
Exactly.
Love the tip. And okay, we learn a lot of German phrases in the textbooks, right? But these phrases, when we come to real life, they're not the same as in the textbook. So, can you teach us a real version, like from the textbook versus the real life Deutsch? One example that I can give is like normally people when they're starting, they would say like, ich hab das nicht verstanden, right? But the German way of saying is like bitte or wie bitte, right? They don't exactly say ich hab das nicht verstanden. So that was one example.
Yeah, but I wanted to add something in general because also like it depends a lot on the situation as well, right? So I think actually what I have noticed from the textbooks I sometimes work with is that they're not like completely wrong. So sentences are not completely wrong, but as you said, they're not sometimes not that natural as in real life. And so
Right.
I think a general rule, or not a rule, but a general thing learners can do is to pay attention to how people really communicate. So have like what we call an awareness of language. Now, what you probably, or the example that you gave was very good. So I realized, okay, the textbook teaches, and then in real life people say bitte. And this is like one example, but this happens in many different situations. But it can be that perhaps in some other situation people say, wie war das?
Yeah,
Oder
right.
was hast du gesagt? So there's not one right way to say something, and so it's like textbook phrases aren't wrong, but depending on the situation, they may not be the most natural way to say something. And then it's totally okay, I think, when learners start saying, for example, ich habe das nicht verstanden. But then it's important to keep an open mind or to be aware or to observe, do people really say that? Or just observe, okay, people say bitte. And like this, adapt or change also your way or the way you express yourself.
So it's more like to hear how people talk to you based on the situation and then see the difference. Okay, the natives use it this way and try to inculcate that when we speak.
Exactly. Because there's no rule. Also, when in my classes, I often say, okay, I say it like this. But other people may say it differently. So my natural way of saying something is like this. Especially, I have quite a few students who live in Bavaria. So, especially in Bavaria, they speak very differently from Nordhessen, so from the middle of Germany where I'm coming from. So I have a certain way of saying things, and then often my students say, "Yeah, but here on the street, people don't talk like you talk. They say it differently." Like, okay, so teach me what do they say? And so this is why I'm always very careful in stating that this is the right way or this is the way people say it. Of course, there are some tendencies. Generally, people say it like this. As you said, bitte, this is very widespread, but it can change from region to region, person to person.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. And Stephanie, I have read in many articles that Germans are not too much up for small talks, but they still do it with their colleagues and maybe so close friends, provided in certain situations, not always. So, how much do you think small talks are important for expats? Is there a way we can also like get into it, or a easier way or a natural way to flow with small talks in Germany with Germans?
Yeah, I think the big problem are the Germans here, maybe. Because, yes, there's actually, not always, of course, I'm generalizing here, but there's like a notion that small talk is superficial, unnecessary conversation, and it's wasted time. So, yeah, we don't need to do small talk. I had a hard time making small talk before I came to Brazil. Sorry. And I didn't get the idea or the reason why one should do small talk. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I've I haven't been in Germany for quite a long time, so I have
But
the
if I meet somebody like on the street, would you recommend like a German friend, right? So would you recommend to have a small talk, or do you suggest any other alternative? What do you think?
yes. I think I would, yeah, start with inoffensive things. The traditional small talk topics like the weather. I don't know if it's somebody close to you, a colleague from university or a colleague from work. Can talk a little bit about work. I don't know, about things that are going on in the city. Maybe there's a concert. People in Berlin had a power out for several days or something. I don't know. Talk about some current events, but nothing too political, nothing too too controversial. And yes, and see how it goes. I have some students that also struggle with this, and one student told me once, okay, I was at a dinner party with colleagues from work, and there was a moment when nobody said anything. And I was like, oh my God, should I say something? And then he started the conversation, but he was like, people were just sitting, eating, and they didn't say anything. And I was shocked. And then, okay, he started to talk about the weather, about the food, about the restaurant. Eventually, so he pushed the conversation forward. And eventually he said, okay, actually, people felt quite relieved when I made the conversation flowing. Yes. I generally talk about some event that's going on, either in the world or in my region, in my town, but like nothing to. I just to comment. Something has happened. Maybe often things like, okay, a power out, or there was, I don't know, a flood, or also positive things. I don't know. For example, I live in a very touristic town here. So we talk about tourism and we talk about the pollution of the water and stuff like this. I don't know. These are my personal favorites, to push some topics that have something to do with what's going on around us, but which are not like too controversial, in my opinion. And then, of course,
Okay.
Cool. So, the next we have our new segment here, which we call it as Say It in German. We want to include something where we speak or where we learn something in German in every episode. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
So we're thinking of like if you can teach us a polite German phrase that instantly make the conversations more smoother, especially with strangers or officials.
yes, I didn't think about one phrase, but about a way of saying things. And these are indirect questions. So instead of asking, where's the train station? You say like, sorry, could you tell me where the train station is? Because this is directly much more polite than like a direct question.
Like Entschuldigung, starting with Entschuldigung. Right?
Yeah, this also, of course, depending on the context. But of course, if you ask for something, or if you want to know something, if you're asking for an information, or even if you haven't understood something, then it's always good to make like an indirect question, and also to use like uh, the Konjunktiv 2, which would like be, könnten Sie das nochmal wiederholen? Und Yes. But I think my main tip would be indirect questions.
Okay. So instead of saying like Entschuldigung, wo ist der Kaffee, right? Instead of that, say like Entschuldigung, können Sie mir bitte sagen, wo die Kaffee ist, right? So something
Exactly.
like this. Okay.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
That's nice.
That's good.
Yeah. So especially with strangers and officials. So I think this is much more polite and something also important. Another thing I thought is important as well is not to use the imperative. I don't know how it is in different languages. So the imperative is when you like give orders, let's say. So you say, gib mir das Buch, sag mir den Weg, gib mir den Kaffee. And for example, in Portuguese, this doesn't sound
Rude.
this doesn't sound rude at all. Exactly.
Didn't know this.
So, but in German, it sounds incredibly rude. And so
Yes, yes.
sometimes, depending on the language, I don't know, for example, I think in English it sounds rude as well. Give me the coffee. I would say, could you please give me the coffee? And in German it's similar. But depending on the language, the imperative may not sound so rude or not rude at all. And this is something German learners could pay attention to or have to be careful in German because it can sound incredibly rude.
Now we are moving to the rapid fire questions. So let's get started with rapid fire. Yeah. So what's your one personal favorite German tradition?
Good question. Yeah, I think I like Christmas. And so, like the atmosphere of Christmas. I'm not religious, so it's not about the date or the
Religious
celebration.
aspect.
Yeah, the religious aspect, but more like the lights and like the cookies and everything you eat. And this is something. So I live in Brazil, in southern Brazil, and here it's summer in Christmas. And I don't celebrate Christmas because I don't come into the Christmas atmosphere. I don't get into the Christmas feeling here because it's hot and it's bright. And so for me, Christmas doesn't make sense. But I really like it in the cold winter season in Germany.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
Next one. What's a very typical German reaction to chaos or unexpected situations? Like,
A typical
you
situation,
know,
reaction.
one will be like Scheiße, right? Unexpected chaos or unexpected situations.
Yeah, I would say could be so ein Mist
Okay.
or verdammt nochmal. This is a bit stronger. Yeah, so ein Mist is a bit more polite. So ein Mist. Und verdammt nochmal is, it's a swear word.
Yeah, yeah. Damn it kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
Next one. So what's one German movie or TV series that you think will be useful in everyday life in Germany?
Do you have any recommendations?
Or any movie or TV series recommendation?
God, terrible with German movies and TV series.
That's okay. I mean,
Yes, yeah, there actually are very good movies, but nothing particular comes to my mind. I don't know if you know something that the Goethe Institute is offering, which is called Goethe on Demand, and where they make one movie, one German movie available once a month, like for free. And it's also a bit off mainstream, these movies. I don't have one recommendation, but if you want to go to this web page, this website, Goethe on Demand, and you find a variety, or each month there's a movie recommendation, which I unfortunately hardly have the time to watch. So, but they're quite good. And
Okay.
they also have subtitles.
Awesome. What else can we ask for, right?
That's really nice and informative. Yeah.
Okay. One German word native speakers use to sound more natural in conversations.
Genau. And irgendwie.
Okay.
I don't know if you have already noticed, but people say a
Genau
lot
is
of.
a lot. but irgendwie is like saying somehow, right?
Exactly, and it makes the sentence a bit more smoother. So there is no semantic meaning. Doesn't have it's just more it's a filler word actually. Genau and irgendwie are filler words, and they make the sentence, the conversation a bit more smoother. So it's not so doesn't sound so direct. And genau we use a lot to also to make a pause to think. Genau. Or to say, okay, I finished, and now I go on to the next point.
Okay.
Okay. So the next one is, what's the most common or frequent question expats have asked you and that made you smile?
How can I get people to talk German and not English with me?
Okay.
Okay, this hasn't made me smile, but this is a very common question.
Okay.
And what else? Yeah, I think it was exactly how do you say this in English? So you know that Germans they separate their trash.
Yeah.
So how does this work? How do I separate my trash? What are the bins and what are the trash items that I have to put in each bin? This is a common question as well.
That's a tough nut to crack, right?
And I have discovered that it differs from city to city.
Yes, that's true.
So there's not like one system for for the whole country, but
Right.
different cities have different systems.
Okay, awesome. So that was the end of the rapid fire, and we are finally down to our most exciting question, the pommes question.
Shoot.
You know,
So, when do you prefer to have pommes? Is it after a long day or to celebrate something good?
I don't eat much pommes. But I think I prefer to have pommes on a special occasion, especially because I don't eat much pommes. When I eat pommes, I like to eat good quality pommes, and then it's for a special occasion. Normally, when I go out to a restaurant and then
okay.
have pommes. Yes.
That's great.
Good to
So,
hear.
pommes for special occasions then.
Okay, amazing. So that was the end of all the questions, and we had definitely a good session with you. We definitely learned a lot of things. The German is going to be a bit different from today because we have some more tips, and that have made us a bit more smarter. So thank you very much for this wonderful session from both of
Both
us.
of
It
us.
was
Thank
great
you.
having you on the show.
Yes, it
And
was. I really enjoyed being here, and I hope that I answered your questions to your satisfaction. Maybe sometimes I don't have had the best answers, but I think it was. I really
That was
enjoyed sharing my ideas and my experience of language teaching with you and also with the audience. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
our pleasure, our pleasure. Yeah, it was very insightful for many like people like me who are learning new to the language. Thanks. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thank you.